Welcome viewers! Today in this video, I'm going to share some informations about the analogy. Okay, so buckle up and let's go! The power of analogy, making your point clear and vivid. Well, delve into the power of analogies in communications. Analogy are a powerful tool to explain complex idea or unfamiliar concepts by relating them to something familiar. They can be used to make a point, describe something in a more vivid way, or simply to add depth and interest to your presentation. By using analogy effectively, you can engage your audience and help them understand your message more clearly and memorable. Now, let's talk about what is an analogy. Analogy is a comparison between two things that are different in some respect but alike in others. It bridges the gap between the known and the unknown by using something familiar, the source, to explain something unfamiliar, and the target. Analogy can be simple or complex, short phrases, or even elaborate stories. What I mean is, an analogy is essentially a comparison that highlights similarities between two seemingly different things. It works by using something the audience already understands, the source, to explain something may not understand yet, the target. This connection helps the audience grasp the unfamiliar concepts by relating it to something familiar. Analogies can be brief phrases or even elaborate stories, depending on the complexity of the idea you're trying to explain. I have a picture here, and as what you can see, there is a message. We all have a responsibility to protect endangered species, both for their sake and for the sake of our own future generation. In this example of feature, the analogy is protecting endangered animals is like taking care of a rare book. Both are valuable and irreplaceable, and we have a responsibility to preserve them for future generations. The point is, this analogy emphasizes the importance of protecting endangered animals by comparing them to something precious and irreplaceable. For making a point with analogy, use analogies to emphasize a key message or argument. The analogy should clearly connect to the point you're trying to make. It can help persuade your audience by making your point more relatable and impactful. One powerful way to use analogy is to make a point. By using a familiar comparison, you can highlight your key message or argument in a way that resonates with your audience. The analogy should clearly connect to the point you're trying to make. It should showcase the essence of your argument in a relatable way. This can help persuade your audience by making your own point more memorable and impactful. The next one is describing with analogy. Use analogies to paint a vivid picture of something abstract or complex. The analogy should capture the essence of the concept you're describing. It can add depth, detail, and a new perspective to your explanation. Another effective way to use analogy is to describe something that might be abstract or complex for your audience. By using a familiar comparison, you can paint a vivid picture and add depth, detail, and a new perspective to your explanation. The analogy should capture the essence of the concept you're describing, helping your audience visualize and understand it more clearly. Okay? Another picture, the sponge and the kid. What have you noticed here? In this example, the analogy is a curious child is like a sponge, constantly absorbing information and experiences. This analogy describes a child's eagerness to learn by comparing them to a sponge which readily soaks up water. And the last is crafting effective analogies. Keep it simple, because the analogy should be easy for your audience to understand. Highlight relevant similarities. Ensure the analogy focuses on the aspect that connect to the concepts you're explaining. Avoid overly complex comparisons. Don't get bogged down in an analogy that's more confusing than the original concept. Don't overextend the analogy. Not all aspects of the comparison will perfectly translate, so focus on the key point. By choosing the right analogy is crucial for its effectiveness. Like, keep it simple because the analogy should something that your audience readily understands. Avoid overly complex metaphors or references that might leave them confused. Highlight relevant similarities. The analogy should focus on the specific aspect that connect to the concept you're trying to explain. Don't get sidetracked by irrelevant details. Avoid overly complex comparisons. Don't use an analogy that's more complicated. Okay? And that's all for the analogy. And now let's identify the analogies, making a point and describe. Number 1, practicing a skill regularly is like watering a plant. A. This analogy emphasizes the importance of consistent practice by comparing it to watering a plant, which helps it grow and thrive. B. This analogy doesn't make a specific point about practicing a skill regularly. Or C. This analogy focuses on watering but doesn't connect it to skill improvement. Okay? The correct answer is letter A. This analogy emphasizes the importance of consistent practice by comparing it to watering a plant, which helps it grow and thrive. Another question. A leader who inspires others is like a lighthouse. A. This analogy describes a solitary structures but not necessarily a leader. B. This analogy describes a leader who provides guidance and direction like the light to help others navigate their way, achieve their goals. Or C. This analogy describes something helpful but not necessarily inspiring. Choose the correct answer. And the correct answer is letter B. This analogy describes a leader who provides guidance and direction like the light to help others navigate their way, achieve their goal. Number 3, taking care of the environment is like taking care of your own house. A. Analogy focuses on taking care of a home but doesn't connect it to the environment. B. This analogy doesn't make a specific point about taking care of the environment. And C. This analogy emphasizes the importance of environmental protection by comparing it to taking care of your own home, which is essential for your well-being. Okay, the correct answer is letter C. This analogy emphasizes the importance of environmental protection by comparing it to taking care of your own home, which is essential for your well-being. Hope you learned something with my information. Okay, thank you so much.